Hey again! Yes, I'm actually making new videos. Gasp. I'd like to have more done on the video side of things, but kinda busy getting the game patched up at the moment, so this is gonna be shorter than I'd like. But oh well. So, anyway, one new version done, and a subsequent follow-up on the way, which should be done by Saturday. Or at least that's when I need it for the next round of playtesting, so it better be done by then. Now, version 0.350 is yet again another big jump because it includes summoners. Woo! That's right, you can now play a fully fledged summoner with all specializations and prestige classes being completed. The one I'm currently working on is version 0.351, which isn't quite ready for another big jump just yet. It'll include the mage base class and its specializations, but probably not the prestige classes for mages just yet, since I have a bunch of bug fixes to do first. Yeah, it still kind of weirds me out that I have bug patches on a text document. But some of the things really are bugs, such as, obvious typos or interactions between mechanics I hadn't considered. One of the ones being fixed up this week, for example, is a tiny little issue with phrasing, which basically lets a non-combat illusion meant for some creative problem solving become just a tiny bit too good at solving combat problems, to the point that it's actually stronger at dealing damage in combat than actual combat-based illusions. Oops. So yeah, bug fixes. Normally my design philosophy is to just let players do whatever zany stuff they come up with, and congrats on them for figuring out something silly, but unfortunately, that particular error means that the combat illusions wind up being a lot weaker than intended relative to such, and rather than rebalance the others, then rebalance all combat in relation to those, basically revamping the whole game, it's easier to just fix the original problem. Anyway, so yeah, summoners are fully done already, and I have enough to get the mages well underway, since one of the playtesters wanted to be a mage. So mages will be next on the list. I've come up with a number of interesting ways to make them technically better at magic in general, without making everyone else worse to the point of not being worth bothering with magic in general, just some nice versatility options. For example, mages will have their primary mechanic revolve around being able to overcharge their spells. Now, normally everyone else in the game has a fixed limit of how much magical potency they can have in a spell, and you can augment that some with a skill to add more complexity to add even more potency, or obviously increase your anima stat. The mages, however, will be able to directly expend action points to ramp up the effects of a spell even more than that. Now, this sounds pretty powerful, though after crunching the numbers, it's actually probably not going to be used even half the time. It's handy, a neat bonus sometimes, but you're generally better off just casting 2 smaller spells rather than trying to overcharge a single spell. Usually. There are definitely going to be exceptions to this, such as wanting to increase the area of effect of a spell, or have it hit additional targets, or to increase its range, and so on, where it might be a good idea to take twice as long, or even longer than that potentially, to cast the spell, but for it to be able to do things another class would generally need to invest more into in other ways. The mage's passive has been locked in place for years at this point, of having a familiar, which gets altered based upon your specialization. I had that idea like at the very start of beginning Saorsa. Like, when I was first building the original website ages ago. Scarily enough, that's something like 3 or 4 years ago at this point. Kind of amazing to think about how far it's come in that time. Yet, that some things have barely changed. Well, anyway, mages will get some neat features like being able to have more fixed spells known at a time for a wider variety of options when it comes to on-demand solutions to problems. But this doesn't directly make them stronger, just more versatile. That's basically the point of mages. They focus on two things: making abusive use of the versatility of magic to do nearly anything you want, and big bada boom. Yeah, mages are heavy artillery for the most part. Mostly meant to stick in the back lines and lob long-range area of effect attacks at groups of enemies, or fry a single target, leaving behind a little more than a bad smell and remnants that would require being scraped off the ground with a spatula. Now, that's just for what's on the way. For what's already been done, well, two things. First off, actually I should have mentioned this at the start, but I didn't think of it. The Saorsa subscribe star has been approved, and this is up and running. Yay! I know at least one person asked about that directly, so there you go. You no longer have to dirty yourself with Patreon any longer. I'll be keeping the Patreon open just in case anyone prefers it, but I'd rather not grow too attached. They've actually been pretty good to me so far, but I am seriously cautious with what they've been doing lately, so I'm not going to give them the capacity to hold Saorsa hostage just in case. Anyway, with that out of the way, the other thing that was done is, as stated previously, summoners. Yes, you can now summon an army at your beck and call. Assuming that's the kind of summoner you want to be, of course. Wait, there are other kind of summoners? Of course there are. So, the basic summoner is a bit better than most characters at summoning minions. Technically anyone can, but summoners can typically summon more and get more of the coveted control attribute than any other class. Control is a stat that governs how many summons you can have out at a time, how powerful they are, illusions, permanent effects, and auras. Basically, you have a single stat that controls how many minions and how strong those minions are, so you have to pick and choose, which also lets stronger characters do both. And having multiple characters that focus and control doesn't step on anyone's toes. Oh, you want summons too? No problem, I'll give up one of mine and replace it with an aura that makes all of them better. Anyway, so the specializations of summoners are what kinds of summons they can make. By default, you basically get a fairly generic sorta clay, featureless humanoid to start with. There's nothing too special about them, no strengths nor weaknesses, other than what you use the pet rules to customize them with. Now, the summoner's specializations branch these off into 3 categories currently, with lots of room for more in the future as I get around to making the expansions for Saorsa. So you can get additional nifty choices to pick from later on. The ones you start out with are elementals, which are mostly range damage with some support capabilities. The undead, which are focused upon melee attacks, and though they're fairly squishy, they're easy to heal and revive. The last type are golems, which are tanky and good at drawing fire, as well as menial labor, such as rearranging the battlefield's topography. While in the way? Not no mo, it ain't. So, those are still fairly straightforward summoner things, but what of the prestige classes? If you've seen the previous ones already, you know that this is where things get really interesting for a class, and the summoners are no different. To start with, we have the most summonery-ish type out there, the Overlord. This prestige class focuses upon controlling the battlefield. Literally. She'll lay claim to the land itself and can manipulate its properties, getting access to the GM's list of abilities to add things like environmental hazards, extreme weather conditions to reshape it, and so on. By expending additional control upon her claimed sanctum, the Overlord also reduces the cost of her minions, meaning she can keep summoning a bigger and bigger army packed within that space. Downside is her minions tend to be squish balls, because A, they're able to operate as a swarm and later a terrifying mob, and B, they're expendable. Yeah, the Overlord doesn't mind not only causing her enemies' heads to explode, but her own minions can explode as well, damaging foes around them based on their current health. And then she can blow up the bodies as well for additional damage. And that's even before you realize how bad of an idea it is to be standing within the sanctum she controls if you're her enemy. The second on our list is the Lichess, who realizes that it's not much good that the weakest point in her army is, well, herself. So she fixes that by making herself immortal and summoning unliving weapons and armor to augment her offense and defense. Paired with blood magic, she's pretty hard to kill already, and her final ultimate ability just flat out makes her basically invincible. Literally, the only way to kill her at that point is to destroy her soul or spirit, depending on what she has, and even then, she gets the ability to store some in her phylactery, so even that may not be good enough. Like, even a literal god has a hard time killing a Lichess for good, meaning that you're kind of stuck dealing with her army, as you can't just cut off the head of the serpent and hope the body dies. And that brings us to our third summoner prestige class, the Transcendent. These summoners are pretty blunt. Go big or go home. And they do mean big. Rather than having lots of little summons, the Transcendent gets obsessed with the perfect form, attaching modular, powerful sections to an absolutely enormous singular summon. There's a purpose behind this, though. It's not just a matter of creating the perfect physical form. It's about having a chariot to ride. Once the Transcendent has managed to create their most flawless concept of a symbiont, she gives up her own body and merges with a massive summoned creature directly, freeing up the need to focus on a single summon any longer, and now being able to return to having an army, but also having the symbiont as her own body as well on top of that. Scary stuff. And if you think that's bad, that symbiont can merge with more than just its creator. It can literally grab onto something and start absorbing the target into its body, growing permanently more powerful. So yeah, lots of fun stuff added already. I'm more than a little busy adding all this new content though, so there probably won't be another video for likely 2 weeks or so. I'll try to get one done then, but even that's no promises. In the meantime, I'll be working to patch up mistakes I found, shall make what exists better, and add even more awesome stuff for people to explore. So, with all that, just a reminder that the subscribe star is actually up and running now. So, yeah. I'll see you next time.